Welcome to Megan's Bookish Life, a podcast where literary meets lifestyle. Each episode is tailored to the guest with questions they've never been asked and funny moments that make us laugh. I'm your host, Megan, and thank you for coming along this journey with me. Today on Megan's Bookish Life, we have the wonderful k.bromberg, author of the Full Throttle series and the new book, Lucky Shot. Christy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I have started a new thing on the podcast where I do an icebreaker question and I don't tell anybody about it.
Yes.
I hated those in school. I absolutely was not a fan. But now that we have more life experience as adults, I think it's easier. That's just me, though.
That depends.
Okay.
Depends on the question.
Okay, yes. That is 100% true. Yes, I didn't think about it. This question will not make you sweat, I promise.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. So on your website, I think it is, the About Me says you're a big procrastinator.
Yeah.
Okay, if you tell me mine, I'll tell me yours. Or tell me yours, same thing. Tell me mine. What are you procrastinating on right now? Big or small?
Huge. I have a book due on Friday and I need about 40,000 words left to write in it.
Oh, Christy.
Yeah.
Mine does not compare.
Yeah, I do this thing where I only write well under pressure, but then luckily my editor was like, hey, it was actually due tomorrow. And my editor was like, hey, I need a couple more days for the one I'm on. I'm like, yes. But then I forgot I have a signing I'm going to. I have all this stuff. So I'm just trying to figure out how to finish.
That makes sense. Okay, so mine was really small. Mine was I'm procrastinating on getting a Valentine's card out to my friend.
Yeah, I have to do that too.
Compared to a book. But I feel like I'm going to get one of those where it says happy birthday instead in my drawer somewhere and cross out birthday and put Valentine's Day.
Pretty much. My kids are just lucky they get them, so it doesn't matter what the holiday is.
Exactly. Here we go. Just take a card. I love you. Here we go. Yeah.
But I think cards are kind of obsolete now.
Oh, I love a good card.
I do too. I love getting a good card, and I used to be the queen of cards. But now it's I'm not paying $6.99 for a card.
So I go to the dollar store, the Dollar Tree. They have...
Oh, that's smart.
The one by us is, or by me...
That is true. That's a good idea.
50 cents per card for 2 for $1. And I'm like, you know what? I can decorate if I need to. These are perfect.
Yeah, that's really smart.
So now my procrastination after this is podcast. I'm going to Dollar Tree. Thanks.
Okay, I'll go to the Dollar Tree too.
Deal. No, you have to write a book. You can't.
I have to pick a kid up from school. I'll just do it on the way.
That's true. Okay, smart. Okay, so we're going to jump right into taking it back about your writing and stuff. So you released your first 2 books, Driven and Fueled, in 2013. First 2 ones.
Yeah.
Then you published 8 books at least from then until 2016, and you just kept going. You were like, yes, that's it.
Yeah, I have 40-something.
Yes, and you started in 2013, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a big timeline. That's really good. What gave you the push to keep on going after the first book came out?
The first book was one of those I didn't write. I had 3 kids under the age of 5. I worked during the day and then I'd come home and I was just kind of sick of watching TV and the same stuff over and over. And my mom had called me and said, you need to meet Christian Grey, Christy. So I met Christian. Then I met Jesse Ward, and then I met Ethan Blackstone. And I started reading about these ladies who were working moms like me, who were doing this. And so I kind of was I'm going to write a book. I'm not going to tell anyone. It's just going to be for me. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to publish it. And the only people that knew that I'd written it was my mom and my husband at the time. And so I wrote it not really expecting anything. I thought if I sell 100 copies, I will be stoked. And by the end of the week, I had sold 1,000, which back then was yeah. So then I was okay, crap, I need to write book 2. And I'd already given a date. And then I started getting feedback from Driven because it's only in the female point of view. And people really wanted to hear his point of view. So then I decided to gut it and rewrite it with his point of view in there. And then there was some other stuff that happened. There was a scene in there that was very similar that I'd already had written that was similar to a book, part of Sylvia Day, the Crossfire series at the time. And there was a scene almost identical. And I was everyone's well, you wrote it first. I'm it doesn't really matter. She's way bigger than me. So then I had to go in and change the whole dynamic of it because I didn't want to be accused of plagiarizing, a really big name author. And then the 3rd book went crazy and hit New York Times, and then publishing houses and all that happened. So yeah,
Okay, so in 2013, I've talked to a lot of authors before who self-published. It wasn't a big thing back then, 2013, was it? How did you go through Amazon? What was there back then?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
I actually published on all the platforms. The difference between then and today is, back then there were maybe 50 books that released a week. We're lucky if there's less than 50 books that release a day now, so there was a lot more opportunity to get visibility. And I think it was just on the tail end of ebooks becoming popular. So, and like the kind of, not sexual revolution, but there was kind of a sense of it with it because people were reading 50 Shades and they were like, hey, no one knows what I'm reading and I can read whatever I want and not be judged by it. So like 2012, 2013 was this magical time in indie publishing. And a lot of us that published back then were like, oh, we miss it, and a lot of it's missing because there wasn't as much competition. But I think that's all made us raise our game. I think the only downside to it is the speed with which we have to publish. Like you have to publish a book every 2 or 3 months to stay visible. And I do think for some, and I'm not going to say this for myself, but quality has gone down in a sense. There's a lot of cookie cutter. I have friends who do this and they admit to it and they have no problem with it. They write the same book, the same format. They know it. 10% this happens, 20% this happens. They literally have like a spreadsheet where they just plug in different things. And I wish I could write like that. I truly do, but I get bored and I can't. But like I have friends who publish once every like 60 days or 30 days. And I just am mind blown by it. And this was before AI came into the picture. So, I know it's not AI because that's a whole other argument, but it was just a different time than it is now. It was fun to be a part of. I mean, I'm fortunate that I got to be a part of it.
I like how your third book went amazing. And then you got like a movie deal from, Passion Flicks and all that stuff. When you hit all that movie deal and all that bestseller, did you ever think like, I've peaked, like I can't go anymore, but then you keep going? Like, did you ever think about that?
Yeah, and to this day, it probably is. I mean, Crash was probably my best-selling book, numbers-wise. It's the end of a trilogy. It's a cliffhanger. Everyone wants to know what happens. And then we went through this anti-cliffhanger phase where everyone hated cliffhangers and they don't want to read series. And then it was like, no one wants to read a trilogy. They only want to read standalones. It's just evolving like probably 3-month, 6-month cycle that just keeps changing. Numbers were way different back then. Like what it would take to hit New York Times then versus now is way different. So it's really not comparable, but it was definitely a fascinating time because we were all just kind of forging our way, trying to figure it out as we went. And there really wasn't people to talk to. We just kind of had, we were the redheaded stepchildren of publishing because no one wanted to admit that indie books could hit the New York Times. And definitely the publishers didn't. Mm-hmm. And then, a couple years into it, the New York Times changed how they report so that you can't hit. It's been interesting to sit back and watch the industry change over the last, 12, 13 years.
That's what I was going to say. You know a lot of it because you've been through it. You've watched it from the sidelines and from the front lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of creativity a little bit, the writing-wise, when you write all these books, 80 plus books, all that, what inspires you to keep going and writing and all that stuff?
Well, it's a job, so I need to.
Yeah.
Creativity-wise, it comes and goes for me. Like, I have friends who have so many books plotted out, so many ideas for, like, the next 4 years. And I look at them and think they're freaking crazy. Like, I don't even know what I'm writing next. Like, actually, I do know what I'm writing next. But, like, I can't plot that way. Like, I mean, it boggles my mind. Like, I have a friend, Carrie Ann Ryan. Like, she knows years in advance. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Creativity for me comes and goes. I was always told the first 10 books are gravy. You have all these ideas, and then after that, it gets really hard. And for me, my books typically have 3 plots. I have his plot, I have her plot, and then I have their plot together. So when you get to so many books, you start worrying that if I write that, it's going to be similar to this book, what I wrote 5 years ago. And this year's the first year I've gotten to the point where I can't think that way anymore. Like, because clearly the story's different, the characters are different, but it's a hard one for me. Like sometimes I can't read while I write because I don't ever want to be accused of adopting the voice of who I'm reading. And so I've kind of forced myself sometimes to like pick up a book, even though I know I can't finish it at the time, just so I can get ideas, and it makes my creativity go, because oddly enough, like one line in a book that has nothing to do with the plot, like 2 days later, I'll remember that line and it will already have like turned into a whole nother story. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird how it works. It could be a song lyric. It could be a news story. It can be a scroll on social media. And you're just like, but what if, I added some tension, and what if they hated each other? That type of thing.
That Justin Bieber song really gave me inspiration. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
You never know with him.
A lot of songs have given inspiration.
When you said that you have people that that like plot out, months, years in advance, I don't think I could do that. My issue is I can focus on writing one thing at a time. If I plot other books out, I'd be so distracted about other plots happening in my brain and not the one I'm writing. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, for me, sometimes it's hard to do that, because then I get more excited about the book that I'm going to write in the future than what I'm writing now. And then it kind of takes the wind out of my sails. Mm. It's hard, I think. Like, I have to be fully invested in what I'm doing, or else I just squirrel, procrastination.
Yeah, me too. That's why I brought that up because I feel that in my bones, literally. Yeah,
but I mean, in the same token, like, I have gotten a lot of crap over the years from the industry people, not like readers, that I don't stay in one lane. Like Melanie Harlow, another author, is very big on stay in your lane. I only write small town single dads. Or, like I have other friends who only write office romance, or they only write this. I can't do it. I would get bored, and you would see it in the product. So, I have billionaires, I have athletes, I have small town, I go across the gamut, but people are saying like, your popularity's fallen off because people don't know that what they're getting from you. And to me, I'm like, well, that's the best part. But I also see the other side where, when you read like 7 books and they're not, hitting your fancy, like, I know I can go to a Melanie Harlow book and I'm going to get a single dad she's going to do a great job with. So I can see both sides of it. Mm-hmm. I wish I could pick one, but I can't.
I completely agree. I see both sides too. As a reader, though, I like when it's, there's different billionaire athlete. I like switching it up. But it's the same author. It's the same voice, same author, but just different story. I enjoy that.
I mean, everybody's different, yeah. That's why reading's subjective.
Oh, good one. Okay, let's talk about your new book, Lucky Shot. So by the time of this podcast episode, it has not been released. So I feel confident that I can't give any spoilers. So no spoilers for everybody. You had a trope reveal on your Instagram for Lucky Shot, and one of them was, in quotes, grand gesture. So when I read that, I immediately was like, I didn't think so deep about that, but I actually love those. You pointed that out for me. I absolutely love those.
I think they are always in romance, but because the trope phenomenon has become, in the past year and a half, has become such a big thing. Like, we used to just write books to write books. And at the end, it was like, oh, he's this or she's that, or, oh, it's like, and now it's like, you have to go in. And I know this is probably one of your questions. You have to go into a book knowing what tropes you're going to write. Mm-hmm. And you have to do them well. On the flip side, there are books that are just trope packed, and they don't develop the trope, so that there's that catch side to it. Yeah, grand gestures, I think, are always a big part of romance. And it depends on how you look at different things. Like a declaration of love for some people is a grand gesture versus, in a billionaire book, it better be he buys out a restaurant so he can see, it depends on what you're writing, depend on how grand it is. But for me, it's always the emotion that's there.
The best grand gesture that I could think of top of my head, probably more, is 10 Things I Hate About You, Heath Ledger, when he sings
yes.
Frankie Valli. Yeah. Yes. And the best part is it is in the kind of in the middle of the movie. So you get that emotion that he's like, oh, I kind of have feelings, but grand gesture. And then things fall off. And then they get back together and that kind of thing. It is the perfect grand gesture.
I love that movie.
I watched it on my VHS player. Like,
I made my daughter watch it with me, who hates movies. And I'm like, you have to watch this with me.
Okay, what'd she say?
She liked it.
Oh, thank God.
We've watched it a couple times since in the last couple of years. But it's like, she's not a movie kid. She doesn't like TV. And I was like, okay, we're watching 10 Things I Hate About You. You got to meet Kat.
Someone told me She's All That was good. And I've never seen She's All That. But they said it's like in the same realm.
She's All That's good too. That's good too with Freddie Prinze. Yeah.
Yeah, now I have to watch it. That was
the
not
old one. I haven't seen the new one.
He's All That? I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hot take. No, I'm not watching that one. I watched the old one, though. Okay, that was not my question. But okay, so when you write a trope, do the characters ever guide you in the middle of the story sometimes?
Always.
Like, really?
Always. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, when I started, it was all about the alpha asshole. Always about the jerk. And, he had to redeem himself. And part of it, I think, is I've matured and gotten older. And, I'm not, I would be like, if you walked up to me and said that to me, I'd be like, dude, get a life. You're done. Like.
Yeah.
And so I think it's harder for me to write them now. And so almost every book I start out, like, he's going to be a jerk and he's going to be this, and then he's not. Like, I just spent like all morning on a scene for my next book where I want him to be a jerk and I don't want her to come off mousy, but then he's not a jerk. So I have to like figure out how to rework that. Like, so yeah, I think it's easy to go into a book with an idea of a trope, but you miss the best part of a book and a plot, I think, if you don't listen to the characters. Because in all my books, like in the Driven series, there is a very big line for the book, like, I race you. And that line was never plotted, never anything. And I was driving home one day from work and I was like, oh my God. And it didn't fit anything. And I had to go back through and readjust the whole book to fit it. And to this day, that's like the most iconic scene.
I would 100% again agree with you and understand about tropes writing themselves, because sometimes when I read a book and there's like a third act breakup and all that stuff, it seems so heavy on the trope aspect that they're trying to stick to. And I think that's because they plotted it out beforehand. And I love that you go through and kind of feel the characters and that kind of thing, what they're going to say to you.
Yeah, and I also, something that's probably going to be unpopular opinion, I also think authors are writing, and I've been guilty of it, so I'm not. Authors are writing to what readers are writing more to what readers' tropes that they like right now, versus sticking to the story and what the characters are telling them. And that's not a bad thing. I've done it. Some of my popular books are written that way. But I also think there's been this loss of authors' autonomy in what they write, and they can all tell you, every author will tell you, oh, I write for me. No, you don't.
I agree.
Like you do. Yeah. You're not going to put out a book you don't like or a story you don't like, but why are you writing if no one's going to read it? So this really huge emphasis on tropes has changed, I think, how we write, and changed how we outline and changed the products that are in the market right now. And who knows, in 6 months it might change, like look at the emergence all of a sudden of the micro trope. Like, he has glasses. Okay, well, I didn't know that was a trope. I just thought that's what he looked like,
Characteristic, yeah.
Yeah, so there's just such a heavy emphasis on tropes and micro tropes, and I get a reader or a consumer getting what they want and, knowing, same with trigger warnings. Like, I totally get all that. It's just interesting. It's an interesting take on how things have evolved, and I'm sure it will go somewhere else, but tropes are definitely ruling the market right now.
I am, to put it boldly, obsessed that you have seen all these trends come and go. I think that's so fascinating to me, and I can't explain why, but congrats, I guess.
The caveat is I probably say too much, but I don't have a filter, so I just say what I think.
You know what? That's fine.
Which could be bad and good. Some people are like, wow, she's opinionated. But, it's just more, the market has shifted and changed, and you have to shift and change with it. And like a curmudgeon-y old guy, there's some things I don't want to shift and change with, but you do it reluctantly because that's what you have to do to keep your business afloat.
Correct. I'm a stubborn person, so sometimes I'd be like, and they have to go, yes, Megan, change.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is next for k.bromberg? Can you tell me something? Spill the tea if you can.
Yes. So 2 years ago, I released a book called Sweet Regret. It was probably like 10 years in, the book that made me fall in love with writing again. Like, I had introduced this character in a book, God, back in like 2016, I think. He's a member of a band, and I had written the lead singer, and this book was called Sweet Ache back then. And for the longest time, I just wanted to write him. And completely out of order of like what I was supposed to write, I just sat down and wrote him. And I really, like, to this day, that's one of my favorite books. So I decided that I needed to finish off the band. I have 2 more band members left. So those are my next 2 books, Sweet Surrender and Sweet Desire. total like bodice stripper sounding names, but whatever. And so I'm writing those. I have my Sin series, which is my billionaire series. Amara Publishing and Tangled has picked them up, and they are re-releasing them in Target and bookstores this year. So yeah, I just got a whole box of them, and they're so pretty. They have sprayed edges and so pretty. So that's happening. Those three will be re-released this year. I have a book, the second book in my Tangled Hearts trilogy, which is another kind of billionaire revenge, think like Murdoch family meets Succession type thing. Book 2 comes out this fall with Bramble Romance. And then I'm going to recover some old series and give them some new life. So this year's a busy year, really busy year.
Yeah, my goodness. I have a Target right next door to me. I used to work there, I don't anymore. But release day, I'm going to show up at 7:02 a.m. and try to find your book.
Oh, thank you.
They open at 7. I'll give them 2 minutes. It's fine. Okay, K.Bromberg, thank you for coming on Megan's Bookish Life podcast. I am real in love and obsessed with your insight, and I'm really appreciative that it came on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Megan's Bookish Life. Don't forget to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And follow me at Megan's Bookish Life Podcast on Instagram.